Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
What's up?
And Larry Correia.
For Crab Clan!
Today's episode, Level Up Your Writing.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the WriterDojo. Larry and I are glad to have you back with us today. Today, Larry, this is the final episode of Season 4.
It's kind of nuts.
Crazy stuff going on. Indeed. All right. Now, because it's the last episode, the previous one we were talking about a little bit more nitty gritty, nuts and bolts of editing. Today, we decided to have a little bit more fun. Larry and I, if you didn't know, somehow, Larry and I are big gamers.
Yeah, we're definitely gamer nerds.
Yeah, in fact, some of so Larry and I met at a con a long time ago. I interviewed him. We had dinner. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, you interviewed me for
Elitist Book Reviews.
Elitist Book Reviews.
Yeah, and then the recording got corrupted because my partner at the time was dumb. So anyway, so we met there, and then it was pretty shortly thereafter that we ended up in the same game group. And that was really, truly how you and I became friends.
Yes.
Was because of Legend of the Five Rings.
Yep. Hence the Crab Clan at the beginning.
Hence the Crab Clan. I would say Unicorn, saying Unicorn Clan, it doesn't have quite the same emphasis as Crab Clan. It just misses.
The mountain does not bend.
No. Okay. Gaming.
Gaming and writers.
Gaming and writers, specifically.
Because there's a lot of overlap. So there's a true story. So many years ago, this is like probably 12 years ago, I was at a con. And you know how writers tend to congregate in the hallway and just shoot the bull. And there was probably a dozen of us. And ranging from noobs to like pretty experienced old hands. We probably had like 5 New York Times bestsellers. We're just chilling in the hall. And when people talk about game stuff, and it turned out of this group, everybody was a gamer. And I was curious, and I was like, who here is not a gamer? There's a bunch of sci-fi fantasy writers. One hand went up. One single author was not a gamer. It was Lee Modesitt.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
For those of you who know Lee is a gentleman scholar.
Yeah.
All-around great guy.
He was too busy researching like Roman legions or something.
Well, he was an economist. He was an economist in Washington D.C. Before that, in the Navy, he was a combat search and rescue pilot in a helicopter. Yeah. Great guy, stunning.
Freaking lovely.
Great
I haven't seen him in years.
But he was the only one. He was the only writer who wasn't a gamer.
You know what? The funny thing. Okay, so I do. Everyone knows at this point now that me and video gaming are close friends. That's how I relax. That's how I recharge. That's how I de-stress.
Oh yeah, I play a lot of video games.
You do more like PvP, first-person twitchy games.
Yes.
I do more role-playing, story-based games.
Yeah, I was World of Tanks competitive for many years.
Your World of Tanks, your Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
I'm Final Fantasy and Uncharted.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but prior to being in this Legend of the Five Rings group with Larry, I hadn't really role-played. I hadn't done role-playing games. In fact, I think that might have been my first one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. How far we've come. Yeah, we've well and truly descended into that pit of madness. But so many, there is so much overlap in reality between what we do as authors and storytellers and the games that we play, the role-playing games that we play.
Well, and honestly, it feeds into the writing. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of that because there are some definite cons that you need to watch out for.
Yeah.
But many of us who become science fiction and fantasy authors, people who are science fiction and fantasy readers.
Yeah.
Where do a lot of science fiction and fantasy readers come from?
Gaming.
Yeah. Or it was one or the other first. You started reading fantasy novels and then you wound up playing D&D. Or you played D&D and then you wound up reading, Sword of Shannara and so on. And it just kind of, the two are very much intertwined. Mm-hmm. They both are hobbies that cater to the very literate.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's not a shock to see so many gamers become writers because gaming is a lot of the same thing. In fact, how I've explained gaming to non-nerds is collaborative novel writing.
Yep.
It's collaborative storytelling. There's usually a loose basis of rules, depending on what you're playing. But like, so every year I do JoinderCon at my house, right? And I've talked about this on the show before. And I'll have like 20 gun nuts, like hardcore, super competitive gun nuts. Now, the gamers of that, there are still some gamers in there. Actually, it's probably usually out of 20. There's probably 5 or 6 of us that are pretty hardcore, maybe 10 that have played.
It's gotten more and more every year.
Yeah, but what I do is, so at the last night, I run a big, mega, huge role-playing game for, between 20 and 25 people, which is insane to GM, by the way.
Yeah.
In fact, I showed Shane Hensley that, the guy that made Savage Worlds, and he's like, dude, you're insane. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah, I used your game. But those people aren't necessarily gamers. Some are, but the ones who aren't, how I describe it is, think about it as if you're doing a brainstorming session, writing a novel in real time.
Yeah.
With a group of people. Mm-hmm. It's collaborative storytelling. You're playing a character, and honestly, if you want to get to where you're good at writing distinct characters, playing a distinct character is awesome. Especially if you're good enough role player that you can play against type. And you can play different types of characters and really play them. And that's fun. And actually, I think it really makes you a better writer.
I think so too. I look back at things and I've talked pretty frequently about how writing up game fiction or just writing up scenes from the point of view of various characters has made me a better writer.
Oh yeah.
The first character that I played in a role playing game was a complete like pacifist.
Which is funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very talky, very polite, complete pacifist. Like I literally, the way my character was built and stuff in Legend of the Five Rings, I literally couldn't draw a sword. Like I wasn't allowed.
Well, you had me for that.
I know. I had Larry. It's just like real life.
I played the muscle. Also, I'm playing against type.
Yeah. But then,
not in that game.
But then later on, you and I were playing in an Infinity game, and I played a werewolf.
You basically played Boyd Crowder from Justified.
I played Boyd Crowder, Space Werewolf.
Yeah, who is a werewolf.
Or another time I played Raylan Givens, basically.
You did. He did fantasy, basically powder mage Raylan Givens.
Yeah. We've done, in one of the games that our buddy Alan ran for us, I played a bookstore owner. That was probably the most on brand.
Yeah, I was gonna say that wasn't really a stretch.
That one wasn't a stretch.
Well, the one where you played Raylan Givens, I played Luther.
Yeah.
Basically I was a pirate detective.
Yeah. Yeah. And gosh, in other games, you've played that sort of guy, or you've played you've played muscle a few times. You've played a shifty assassin.
Well, I'm usually the GM.
You played a shark.
I played a shark once. That really, poor Steve. That was actually one of my favorite characters.
That was the one where I played a legit paladin.
Yeah.
As if written by Raymond Chandler.
You did a hard-boiled detective paladin.
Yeah.
Can you guys see where we're going with this, though? As far as like the character growth and stuff? I have several characters from my novels that you guys have read that they were role-playing game characters to begin with.
Absolutely.
Jagdish from Son of the Black Sword.
Yeah.
Straight up was a character.
Yep.
And I didn't change him at all.
No.
That guy was the soldier's soldier and was just awesome. I love it. But like just a put upon dude. Toru Tokugawa from Grimoire.
Straight up out of L5R.
It's Hida Makoto.
Yep.
From that was actually Steve's bodyguard.
Yep.
Very honorable, angry young man.
Yes. Yes.
A little delusional. A little idealistic.
One of my favorites, your short story that we based off Tony Battolino's character.
Oh yeah, so The Great Sea Beast is a story that I've actually won awards for, this story.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was is I needed to write a story with a giant kaiju monster. And
was this for that Bane Big Book of Monsters?
I think
one?
so. And I needed it fast.
Yeah.
I'd forgot about it. And so I just asked Tony Battolino, who we played with. I was like, hey, Tony, can I write up like your character's life story from our L5R game, who is basically a drunken archer. But the reason he was a drunken archer is because of his tragic backstory of losing his father to a sea monster that no one else believed in.
Yeah.
Only this kid believed in the Great Sea Beast. And he hunted down, and his whole mission was to hunt down the Great Sea Beast and regain his honor. And I wrote that story. And it was fantastic. Of course, I filed all the serial numbers off and just moved it to...
Of course.
Imperial Japan, which is funny because then I used this kid's, that character's kid for my Predator story.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, I moved it to, 13th, 14th century Japan anyway. I might as well just run with it. It was there.
Man, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
it's the same character. They're the same character family. So it's like, and he even references his dad killing the great sea beast.
Well, you and I have a story coming out in Sean Hazlitt's Weird Wars 3 China story anthology. From what I understand, that comes out in January.
And it is straight up.
It's straight up using the characters' names and all from the Octune Cthulhu campaign that I ran.
Yeah, so World War II, Cthulhu, and we were playing guys from the 101st Airborne.
Mm-hmm. 101st and 87.
And honestly, we just wrote basically that part of that game.
We took, part of it was them or we referenced pieces of that game, but we took that that group, and the whole idea is that they're out of time. They're in different periods of war-torn timelines.
Yeah.
And
Linear time has been broken for these dudes.
It doesn't matter. They're going around time to time hunting down eldritch beasts. And they just happened to be in China for this one.
Yeah, I was Sergeant Kane-Ho.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally all those characters plus one who was a red shirt of a good buddy of mine named Tim Mock. He's Chinese, and the story was in China. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'll just add in my buddy as a red shirt because I always put my friends in my books.
Oh yeah,
and so in my stories, and so we did that. Man, Larry and I had a blast writing that story. But it wasn't just us looking at at the game we played and saying, cool, we played this session. How do we novelize this session?
Yeah, that's the downside. That's what you don't want. We've all read that fantasy novel. Mm-hmm. We have all read a fantasy novel where we read it and you're just straight up, this dude took his D&D session, warts and all, and wrote it down.
Yeah.
And it feels like it.
Uh-huh.
And it reads like it. And I'm not talking about game lit. Okay, it's a totally different thing here.
No, that's radically different.
Radically different. There's a different thing. But I'm talking about somebody just took their D&D game and they wrote it down. And it feels like, and does that normally just, it doesn't feel immersive? No. And it tends to feel amateur.
I think there's a lot of the early, like Forgotten Realms novels that
I read so many of those in high school.
I did too. And a lot of them are great, I mean, even the ones that I wouldn't consider my favorites, I can look back and I can say I learned something from them. Or, I mean, guys like R.A. Salvatore, Bob Salvatore, you read his stuff and you're like, dude, you know exactly what you're doing when you write action.
Yeah.
Like, you know exactly what you're doing. And he almost single-handedly created the whole world of tie-in fiction himself. But some people do it really well. And then there's others where you read those stories and you go, man, I'm pretty sure that in the background I'm hearing that D20 being rolled.
Yeah. Now, the key is take the good story elements. And this a lot of times it's fun story elements you came up with on the fly. That's the best kind, the spontaneous ones. Take those good bits.
The discovery ones?
Yeah,
Sucker.
Well, it all comes from some. Yeah, you got to discover even the outline at some point. But take all those good bits and then gel them into a cohesive new thing.
Yeah.
Don't just reskin your D&D game. Just take the good bits and feed that into the story grinder.
Yeah. One of my favorite authors, no surprise, Steven Erikson. Oddly enough, that series came about through role-playing. Him and his buddy Cameron Esselmont, they're both anthropologists and stuff, and so they have a really good understanding of human history and human nature, right? And so it's how civilizations are created and then fall, and how they interact with each other. And so they're out on digs and stuff all the time, and they, to pass time, that's what they did. They role-played in this world that they'd created together, which happens to be the Maalism Book of the Fallen. When you read the first book, you can tell. You can totally tell. You're reading through and you're going, oh, dang. Pretty pretty sure you guys are rolling some dice behind the scenes on this page. But then as time goes on, they get away from that because they do what you just said, Larry. They're talking about what are the cool things that happened? What are the cool characters? What are these weird, spontaneous story like hooks that really grab people? And they just like grabbed onto those and really did a deep dive on those to actually create the immersive world that feels human and natural. But not everyone can do that. I mean, I'm not Steven Erickson. So I'm curious, Larry, you've written one or two novels now. One or two. And
Dozen.
yeah. I'm curious as to some of the stuff that you've learned from role playing that you've integrated into your writing, from gaming that you've integrated into your writing.
Characters doing unexpected things.
In what way?
And people saying things that like you yourself wouldn't think of. So like when I'm GMing, it's a lot like writing a book, right? And that I'm the master of this universe. Uh-huh. And I've set up where I think it's going to go. And I've provided tools for you guys to use, or tools for my characters to use. And my players will all of a sudden then do something that I'm like, what? And it takes me by surprise. But a lot of times what you guys would come up with that I never thought of in a million years was good. And so honestly, the biggest takeaway I could take was flexibility. Story flexibility and flowing with it. Because you guys would do, because I honestly, guys, I'm spoiled too. I got a good bunch of role players. Not that we played for like 6 months hardly at all. Holy crap, life gets in the way. But I got usually a good crew. It's mostly writers. Mm-hmm. And you guys are all super creative. And so you guys would do stuff that I just didn't see coming. I've tried to take some of that stuff, that spontaneity and some of the truthfulness to the character to my own books. Because sometimes I'll be writing something and the character, what I had planned originally, what I had outlined originally, was not what they would do. You know, and then you run with that.
I think one of the lessons I learned, and this came back with, shocker, one of our L5R campaigns. There was this one time where we went into, it was basically a city of the damned sort of scenario. Okay. It was taken over by Japanese demons, Oni. Okay. And this was when, our late friend Zach was in the group. Okay. And I was playing the murder assassin.
And he was Shintaro.
He was like Mr. Honorable, like Andy Griffith.
Farmer Samurai.
Yeah. So we go there, we have this scene, we're all having a good time, it's fine. Afterwards, because we got extra XP if we wrote up game fiction, and we were all writers, so of course we all did it. So I write up this scene from my character's point of view, and it's like dark, dark, dark. Like all dark.
Yep, I remember this.
The
Well, I ran a horror session.
the darkness of an inside of a coffin on a moonless night.
Yeah,
Beverly Hills Ninja.
These guys were just fighting demons
And
in
then
a haunted city.
I send mine out to the group. And everyone's like, "Dang, yeah, that's how it was." And then Zach sends his out. Exact same scenes, exact same thing, but it's like straight out of a buddy cop movie. Like it's pure humor. And there's something about it. I mean, it wasn't off-brand. It was perfect. And especially when you compared the two pieces together, like the whole group just lost their minds collectively over it. We were like, no freaking way. You could not have scripted this better.
Yeah, it was all about character perspective.
Character perspective.
And his was funny and goofy.
Same exact scenes.
But it was like almost Laurel and Hardy. It was like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and mine was, I mean, everything
The
was
R-rated
awful.
horror of Frankenstein. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, it was bad. So what I learned is that it's that matter of perspective from character to character. You can have the same scene. You can see all these different variety of characters can be enveloped within the same scene and yet have radically different perspectives on it and radically different reactions to it. And by taking that, it's really helped me in my writing, Larry, because I can look at things in our previous episode, we were talking about editing, and I can look at an episode, or I can look at a scene and I can say, okay, well, this character should be seen differently than this character who's seen it this way. And I can write those perspectives in, and it feels different and it feels fresh. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to delve into it, and we're going to talk about some of the things that perhaps you shouldn't do. We'll be right back.
Hello, word mercenaries. I'm Thomas Umstadt Jr., host of the Novel Marketing Podcast, here to bring you book marketing commandment number 10. Thou shalt not be false to thine own brand. Your brand is not a photo, logo, genre, or collection of fonts. Your brand is the story you tell about yourself, and, more importantly, it is the story your readers tell about you. The old word for brand is reputation. While you may write many books in your career, you only get one reputation. And while it takes a lifetime to build a reputation, it only takes one stupid mistake to destroy one. As you make promises to your reader, remember that your reader expects you to keep those promises. To learn more about how to build your author brand, listen to my podcast, Novel Marketing, available at www.novelmarketing.com and everywhere podcasts can be found.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, top half of the episode, we talked about some of the things that we've learned, how we've implemented, some of the examples of where we've actually done and taken our gaming and used it in our fiction.
I've done this a lot.
You've done a lot. I mean, really, in reality, Servants of War comes from this same mindset.
It does, because it was originally we played War Machine, and we had a War Machine campaign we played, and originally that was going to be a War Machine project.
Yeah.
And that fell apart, and then years later we took the outline and scrubbed the serial numbers off.
Made it much, much better.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's maybe one of the observations that we can take. Just because you had a great story within a game session doesn't mean that you shouldn't move pieces around, perhaps adapt it to your own. Games have constraints. Your fiction and your world doesn't necessarily have those same constraints. You have more freedom.
Yeah. A lot of times when you read a lot of these stories that are obviously clearly ham-fisted, lifted from role-playing games, you can tell what game world it came out of.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, you got to scrap that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you had a cool scenario, cool characters, cool interaction, cool story, and it's your story, you need to distance it enough from where it comes from that it's not just like, this is just clearly somebody wrote down their Forgotten Realms campaign, and I can tell it's Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You need to tweak it enough. Or this clearly they were playing Deadlands.
Yeah.
And this clearly, this is straight up, this is just Deadlands. Okay? So make the world your own. All right? Scrub off the serial numbers that you need to do. A lot of times it doesn't even need to be the entire story. Mm-mm. It's just bits, scenes. That's where I think the real value is. Do you remember, okay, so Son of the Black Sword, that's a series that has like won all the awards and got all the prestige, and only thing I've ever written that is actually critically acclaimed. There's a scene in the second book where they're having a play in the Capitol, and it's about Blackhearted Ashok and his many crimes against the first caste.
Yeah.
Okay, so that came from a role-playing game, but when we did the role-playing game, it was totally different. And what it was is that we had played, Steve's laughing because this was actually one of the best things I've ever done as a GM. I took one of the major pivotal battles from our first campaign, and because we were playing a sequel campaign that was set like 25 years later, right? Mm-hmm. And with totally different characters, totally different situation. Well, one point they go into this other kingdom was where this other event had happened, and there's a play. There's in the play that I'm putting on and these guys are here watching it, is all of our characters from the first game, only told from the perspective of one of the guys who, and so it was like they had these different clans, as in like Son of the Black Sword, there's great houses.
Yeah.
So one of the great houses / clan, it was from their perspective. So like my character was just idiot comic relief. Was just this big fat dumb guy who was blundering around lost.
Yeah.
And Steve's character from that was like the most heroic dude ever.
I was like all muscle bound.
And like
Huge.
he was like saving the day. But what we did was
I think I came in on a rope. Like I swung in.
my guy just wandered around lost. And it was totally opposite of what really happened, but it's 25 years later, it's all propaganda. But I took that idea of having a play put on that was just pure propaganda about political events from a very skewed source, and I used that. And mine was way darker because it was about a crime, right? Yeah. But it was basically took an event where it was like a scene from this fantasy novel that like a year later was being turned into what was basically a horror movie, right? To terrify this group of people. And it was just interesting, but that's just that little nugget of idea. And we just came up with that organically. I remember you guys laughed your butts. Like, that one was so funny because I just took every single character and like had the most screwed up propaganda version of them ever.
Yeah.
Our big pivotal final battle.
Oh, man. You know, there's... I mean, Larry and I have been role-playing together for...
a decade.
More than a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, 12, 13 years now. And within 25 minutes, we've talked about, half a dozen different ways in which we've used it. That's like one a year. Okay. Like it's not the times in which we've been able to successfully pilfer from our own adventures in gaming is much, much less than the actual amount of gaming that we've done. So what that means is there are a lot of scenarios where we've just said, nah, there's no reason to game up or to fiction up this game that we played.
No, because it doesn't fit with what you're writing. Where it is useful is we've talked about sharpening the saw, refilling the bucket.
Yeah.
Part of time management. And so for a lot of writers, that creative outlet that's not playing in your world is a valuable thing. I mean, on that note, people like ask me, like, hey, Larry, there's multiple Monster Hunter International role-playing games. Have you ever, do you play that? I was like, no, I don't. Because Monster Hunter,
work for you.
Yeah, Monster Hunter International is my job. That's what I do all day. Mm-hmm. So the idea of me role-playing MHI to get away, oh, man. I mean, I do it for charity games and stuff at cons and that kind of thing. Totally different. But the other thing, too, is I can't just relax and play that because what happens is I'm playing it and then the other players at the table are all looking at me like, is that correct?
Yeah.
Sure it is. It's whatever you want it to be. But so I don't. So, but I think the most valuable thing is actually the fill in the bucket. Mm-hmm. It's a creative endeavor. It's collaborative storytelling. There's no pressure. There's no drafts. There's no editing.
Yeah.
It's just go have fun. Have fun with your friends.
All right. Let's talk about some of the ways in which we can screw this up. So,
well, we've talked about the bad.
We talked about the bad.
The bad adaptations.
There are a few things that I think we do want to be wary of. And you hinted at this in one, and that's where, as you're reading a story, you can kind of tell that it came from a game world. Be very, very careful with that. Those game worlds, they'll sue you.
Oh yeah, you need to make sure that you can clearly demonstrate that your world is your world. Mm-hmm. And guys, it's fantasy world. There's no reason to use somebody else's.
Mm-hmm. Unless they're paying you to.
Yeah, when we say file, yeah, that's true. When we say file the serial numbers off, I mean, I'm meaning this quite literally. There's some stuff that you're fine with. Like, so if I take from one specific fantasy world that's inspired by Russian mythology and Slavic mythology, I can keep the Slavic mythology. You know, no one owns Slavic mythology other than, the Slavs. Okay? And my grandma's Polish. I'm good to go.
Well, when I was at Gen Con...
Lithuanian and Ukrainian. So yeah, I got
some German. So last year at Gen Con, I was having a conversation with the guys from Rogues in the House podcast. And we were all chatting. And in the middle of that podcast, I was talking to they asked me about what Servants of War was about. So I started talking about it. I'm like, yeah, trench warfare fantasy, but it's super horror. It's like, The Witcher meets 1917, dark fairy tale world, blah, blah, blah. And I'm talking about it. And off to my left, this dude's eyes get really, really big in a good way. Not like he's getting eaten or anything. So he, like the moderators for the discussion, they kind of look at me and they look at him and they start laughing and they go, They go, Steve, this guy right here, he actually writes for a game that does some of that. I'm like, no way. And obviously, my interest was immediately piqued. It's called Never Going Home.
Oh,
I have all the books somewhere
cool.
over here.
We're in Steve's office.
And it's like it's basically Weird Wars 1.
Cool.
Very, very minimalistic, super good. The art's really cool for it. I love the game. They just did a Kickstarter for an edition. Anyway, so as we were talking, pretty much all those guys went out and read Servants of War and loved it. And so, and I've seen the game and I love the game. And so it's just this nice, we found this like nice middle ground of we all love each other's stuff. We love that there's some similarities there.
Yeah, that's fun.
But their system isn't our book, and our book isn't their system.
No, because we're all drawing upon different ideas.
Mm-hmm. We're all influenced by everything.
That's why we all get offended when some company, all creative people get offended when some company gets too big for its britches and tries to like trademark something that's like totally normal and been used forever.
I'm trademarking the word fantasy.
Space Marines.
Yeah.
Are you now? Because we can find books back to like when somebody looks at like 1907 or something where people have been using that trope.
Yeah.
I mean, Marines go on ships go in space. Space Marines. It's not a big jump here, dude.
We're trademarking hit points.
Yeah. Oh, that is one danger is when you're writing action scenes. Remember we talked about this in the writing action one. In real life, human beings don't have hit points.
No, we don't.
We have blood pressure.
I was going to say we have arteries.
Yeah. So when you're taking your fights over your action sequences over, keep that one in mind, guys. You know, honestly, the biggest thing is it's an idea garden. We've talked on the show about the idea garden before. Gaming is a fertile field.
Yeah.
You know, there's stuff that we've had in games that I have not used in a book that I will. I guarantee there are bits I have not found the appropriate bit. I have no idea what world is going to... Do you remember that one we were doing a gladiator one-off?
Oh, yeah.
And me and Pat were gladiators.
Yeah.
And I was the horse racing guy and he was the chariot guy.
Yeah,
and Pat died during the race.
But you...
And I was going to win.
Yeah.
So I stopped and picked up his body.
I know.
And put it on my saddle and carried him across the line so he'd finish it. So I lost, but he finished his last race.
Yeah, it turns out winning wasn't a good thing in that campaign.
No, actually, it just got worse and worse from
Yeah,
there.
because I won that one.
Yeah, you did.
Quote unquote, won.
It was Roman gladiators with Cthulhu is what that one was. So Steve won.
Yeah.
The Iberian survived. I'm just saying that. The Iberian always survives. But I'm going to use the scene where a guy died, or competitors, and one dude dies in the race, and the other dude stops and picks him up to carry his corpse across the finish line. That's going in a book at some point. I don't know when or where. That's too cool not to.
Well, I mean, we played an alien game last October.
Oh my gosh, that was one of the best games I've ever run.
And at some point in time, we could take the broad strokes of that game and turn it into a novella or something.
I straight up, I could take, that was one, okay, so usually guys, you can't translate stuff over directly because the timing, the pacing, the character building, the world building, it just doesn't fit the novel format in a way that readers enjoy, right? This one did. Like, this we straight up.
I mean, obviously, there's a couple things.
I have to edit some stuff.
Yeah, but
this, I guarantee though, this Aliens game we ran was better than Aliens 3, 4, Prometheus, and whatever that other one was.
Those are low bars.
If we had just turned that into a script as it stood, better. And it was paced better. And that was actually one of the best, my top moments as a GM ever. Because rarely do you have a thing that would have been a 2-hour movie.
Oh, yeah.
And would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I mean...
20 characters.
Yeah. But, you know, it's... Those don't come about that often.
That's not the... I'm going to say 20 characters. That was the 20 characters I ran for my group of 6 novelists.
Oh, man.
Not the one I ran for 20 gun nuts. That was a little more chaotic.
Yeah, well, and
that's
it didn't...
more what normal our games are.
It didn't work near as well.
Well, no,
in that one. It was still fun.
Well, it's 20 sunburned, tired gun nuts after 4 days of hardcore training.
Yeah.
We were all incoherent. I was lucky. I'm lucky just to keep people,
Awake.
I'll take it.
I think what's interesting to me about all this, I want to touch back on what you said about the idea garden. I think that is probably the best single use of your gaming. You have a garden, you have a tree, okay, a fruit tree, say an apple tree. It sprouts up. Not every piece of fruit on that tree is good. Some of them fall off and they rot because, that just happens. Some of them get eaten by birds. Some of them get eaten by worms. Not every single piece of fruit from that tree is good, but some of them are. And some of them, you're not just taking, I'm going to torture the crap out of this metaphor.
Yeah.
Just be ready.
That's what metaphors are for.
I'm going to torture it to, that's what we do in Steve's basement. We torture things. So you can take that piece of fruit and you can just eat it straight up. It's pretty good. Or you can turn it into apple pie and it's better. Okay. I think for me, that's what the gaming does. It allows me to see other people be creative in their way. It allows me to see things from other points of view, the way other people do. And it allows me to play against type, unless I happen to be typecast as a shifty rogue character in every role-playing game I play. Because that seems to happen to me.
Or pseudo-Russian tough guy for some reason.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah. The thing is, playing against type, what a valuable skill set to have as a writer.
Absolutely.
Because we've talked on the show before, what is some of the worst thing about woke fiction and message fiction?
It's all the same.
Well, it's because everybody who's good thinks what I think.
Yep.
Everybody who thinks different than me is bad and dumb, and they're stereotypes. And it leads to weak writing.
Remember the game that we played in the car to World Fantasy in 2011?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a fun game.
It was Warhammer Fantasy.
12 hours in a car.
12 hours in the car, well, then 12 hours back.
No, so it's a 24-hour role-playing game.
Yeah, and this was one of the cases where fate typecast me. I random rolled twice and got the exact same character both times.
Shifty rogue.
Gosh dang it. But, you played a very different character. The girl who was with us, Julie Wright, she played this like rat catcher.
She was hilarious.
But we played it like we were characters in Burn Notice.
Yeah, because it turned out, because, Warhammer Fantasy, you expect it to be a lot of hack and slash and blood and guts. No, we were Burn Notice. We were straight up.
We were solving weird problems.
We were con men, basically.
Yeah.
We never fought anything until the very, very end when I got the jump on somebody and whacked him with an axe.
Yeah.
That was like the extent of our combat.
Yeah, the rest of the time we were like conning shops out of money.
We lied, cheated, and stealed.
Yeah.
For 24 hours.
But, how valuable was that, though? I mean, seeing, doing things in a world out of character. Again, Warhammer Fantasy. You're like, okay, so when's the Nurgle Beast going to come and eat me?
Oh, man, we avoided the Nurgle Beasts.
Oh, no. We were too busy conning people with our rat catching schemes. But the thing is, by playing something like that, no. I mean, will I turn that into a story? No, I won't.
No.
But playing a different type of character against the expectations of the world that we're playing in is a really interesting thought process.
Well, and because the world can change entirely. So Dead 6, people don't realize Lorenzo, my character I wrote in Dead 6, was based on a rogue from a D&D Forgotten Realms campaign.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. I mean, he's like straight up. It was straight because that was the one that I wrote live over the summer, where Mike was write 1,000 words and I'd write 1,000 words, and we did a serial thing on the internet. So I needed a fully fleshed out character ready to roll, like on the fly. And so I grabbed a character that I played, and his name was Ozzy, but that was actually one of his aliases. That was one of Lorenzo's aliases in Dead 6. And he was just a rogue. He was a malicious rogue character, and I played the crap out of him. But that's how I ran it. And that's how I wrote it in the book. But it's totally 1,000% different story and different setting. But it was just a completely fleshed out character ready to roll with thoughts, feelings, opinions, anger management issues.
Yeah. So I hope, guys, what you're hearing here is the idea of doing role playing games, doing all that, having your fun with it, but using them as tools, as we always say. Using it as a tool in which you can learn and progress as an author, whether it's through gathering of ideas or it's for changing how your characters behave, seeing how two different characters in the exact same situation can view the events with polar opposite intent, or with completely different reactions. So anyway, well, that's it, Larry. That's the end of season 4.
Wow,
That's all we
crazy,
got.
guys.
4 seasons. We've been basically doing this for almost 2 years.
We're coming up on our 100th episode.
100th episode. I think this is episode 96 or something like that.
Yeah, so we'll probably record episode 100 at LibertyCon.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have producer Jack there. So maybe we'll do a 100th episode recap with 3
Don't
of us.
we have a panel?
We are going to have a WriterDojo live panel there.
Maybe that's what we should air as our 100th episode.
We could, yeah.
Yeah,
Might as well.
that's crazy.
All right. Well, to all of you listeners out there, thank you so much for sticking with us for 4 whole seasons of us gabbing about whatever the crap we gab about.
Crab Clan, apparently.
Crab Clan, and definitely not Unicorn Clan. It just doesn't have the same gravitas. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate all of you. This is the Writer Dojo, and we'll see you in season 5.
WriterDojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nivo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
And it's like dark, dark, dark. Like all dark.
Yep, I remember this.
Dark, dark, dark.